we're going to cover some fundamentals on how to draw joints properly. Now, we already covered how it is to draw joints, but now I'm going to talk about some techniques of laying out joints. So the first thing is I'm going to go into our side view, and I'm going to draw a curve like this. Like that. Okay. This method of drawing out joints is what's called freehand. I'm just drawing joints by eye, and I'm just placing them down. Now, as the joints are curving, I want you to point out something. I want you to click on your component mode, and then we're going to actually click on the question mark when that pops up. So I'm clicking on component, and then I'm clicking on the question mark. Now, with that joint selected, do you see how we can see the orientation of our joints? We can see Y is facing out this way on here, like that. And then all of a sudden it shifts and goes in the opposite direction. So what is this going to do for our system? Well, let's go back into object mode, and I want you to shift select a bunch of these joints. Like that. Okay, and that's fine. Now when I rotate it forward, we expect it to actually everything to go this way. All the joints together. And you see, instead it's actually going backwards. It's actually going to cause a kind of an unpredictable result. So, well, not unpredictable, but it's actually not what we want. So if I just selected the first 3 joints like this before the actual axis flipped, you'll notice that I rotate this exactly the motion I want. And the reason is that when you start doing S-curves, or when you start doing 90-degree angles, Maya's orientation flips itself automatically. It's just a rule on how it orients its joints. So, you know, for a tail or a back, this is really, really bad. We normally don't want to let Maya give options on drawing joints. So if I'm drawing freehand joints along a straight line, they're fine. But once I start curving and moving around, we have a lot of problems with those type of, like the flipping issue. So I'm just going to move this joint chain over. And now I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a series of joints just straight. I'm going to hold down, I'm going to click my first joint. And then I'm going to hold down shift and drag up like this. Let me actually do that again. I don't want to be on the origin because it's hard to see. So I'll draw my first joint, and then I hold down shift and I draw up like this. Like that. And I just drew about 5 joints and hit enter. Now all these joints are actually pointing in the same direction. Let's go into our component mode, and we have our question mark. And you know how Z's are facing all forward on here like this? That's good. That means if I shift select these, I'm just going to shift select all 3 of them. Shift, shift, shift. And now when I rotate it forward, it arcs cleanly. Now, there are tools to reorient a freehand back like this, but I much rather make sure that everything is oriented properly off the beginning. Now, in this case, if I wanted to say, okay, you see how it's -20 right now forward? Let's say I wanted it to be positive going forward. Well, this is pretty easy because I can just rotate my x-axis around 180 degrees and then freeze it. Say modify freeze transforms. And now what that did is it moved my z-axis opposite. It flipped it around. So now if I grab my joints, I can rotate them and it be positive forward and negative back. So I can affect how the orientation is going to be. Now you say, well, what if I needed to curve this back? That's great for a straight back, but how would I need to curve it? Well, I can actually just curve it right now. I can just rotate them back like this. You know, I can rotate my back as much as I need to. And then when I'm done, as you see, you will have rotation values now. When I'm done placing them, I'll just freeze transforms on it. Now your first reaction is, well, isn't that going to destroy your transforms? You can never get rid of your translates on your on joints. It's impossible. Their whole point is their position in space. So when I freeze transforms, you see how they all shifted? But now when I pick walk through, it's only in translate. You don't see the actual rotations on there. And we still have our same orientation. I can show these and reflect like that. And you see how they're all Z's are facing out in this case. And that's exactly what I want. So this is a basic property of drawing freehand. Another thing we want to point out is that when we draw our joints, the root joint on our joint system, this could be the beginning of your back or the beginning of your arm, it is fine to have 3 translation values in here. There is no situation where your joint should have rotation values or scales other than 1. But our translation is its position away from the origin. So if I zero out these translates, you see how it snaps right to our origin? Good. That's what we want. But the children, these values here, as you'll see, are actually the distance away from their parent. So in other words, if I zero out this translate x here, it'll pop right up on top of our parent, which is exactly what we want. This allows us to do stretchy systems. Like if I go through and I scale multiples, you see how it's stretching. So this is what would be considered as clean joints. So no rotation, scales at 1. The first joint or the root system is going to have multiple translates, and then all the children joints are only going to have translate x values into it. So those are some properties of drawing straight line joints and making sure your orientations are matching. And this straight line method is what we're going to use for our entire character. Well, it might seem a little restrictive in the beginning. It'll save you a lot of issues with drawing out your IKs and making sure more advanced like stretchy systems work properly, because our values are going to be much more clean and our orientations are going to be all pointing in the same direction.